Good afternoon. Let us be mindful of our coming together today as we hear these words. The author is unknown. Excuse me. Sometimes it takes a death to remind us of life, to transform the gathering of loved ones into a sacrament. Sometimes it takes a death to remind us how short is life, how infinitely precious are the commonplace deeds of love, how treasured are the hours of friendship. And despite the distances of time and place, how strong are the bonds of family and community. Sometimes it takes a death to remind us of life's blessings. We have gathered here this afternoon to grieve the death and to celebrate the life of Lois Thompson, a longtime member of this congregation and when death comes of many years, as it has now, our grief falls as a quiet sadness. When death comes to one who has valued freedom, who stoically endured pain, and was more and more confined in recent years, our grief is softened somewhat and may be accompanied by a gentle sense of relief. Yet we gather with sorrow in our hearts. To simply be together for a time draws our hearts into ways of healing that can only be offered in community. We have come to give thanks that we have known Lois, this strong, determined, independent, little woman of a big heart, great joy, indomitable spirit, and grit. Among us, we have lost a mother, a grandmother, a second mother, a neighbor, a mentor, a teacher, and beloved, loyal friend. By our presence, we pay tribute to the memory of this woman who played an important part in so many of our lives. By our presence, we show our love and respect for the person she was, and we have come to say our goodbyes. Words from the poet and prophet Khalil Gibran seem appropriate when we think of Lois as we hold her memory in our hearts. This is from the prophet on joy and sorrow. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Will you please join in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. She was the most amazing, shrinking woman whose smile never shrank. One of Lois's oldest friends summarized the conversation I had with her with those words, and they seem so right. In my mind's eye, I can still see Lois in the Masry television ads, that big smile and tilt of her head, communicated energy and a zest for life that, of course, anyone who came to live there would surely enjoy. And Lois was at the center. With good reason, producers of that commercial chose to put her there. She loved life, and that smile embodied her joy in living. Every person with whom I have recently had the pleasure and privilege of speaking spoke about Lois's love for life. Whether it was a teacher with whom she taught, a woman who considered her a second mother, or one who regularly visited her at Daughters of Sarah in these last years, Lois's love for life was confirmed. Debbie Wine, taught physical education at Linwood School, where Lois taught for 25 years. She recalled watching as Lois brought the children in her class to the gym. And I quote, "They would be talking, laughing, some of them skipping, bouncing off the walls, having fun." She went on, "There were no straight lines of children quietly, solemnly coming down the hall like all the other classes." Lois's message throughout her teaching was have fun and joy. But now it's time to listen to me. And the children did. Lois could get kids to do things the more strict teachers could not, like paying strict attention, erasing the board. Debbie continued, she taught from her heart, and she loved the kids, and she loved teaching. One of her Albany UU friends said it slightly differently. It was related to adults. A request for help from Lois was like an invitation to dance. It never felt like an order. You were going to do something together, and you'd have a good time. She was a partnering person. And Lois partnered with her beloved Bob. One of you observed they were a couple who were truly a couple. They traveled this country and the world. They square danced and round danced at the church and joined a ballroom dancing class group after lessons at Arthur Murray. They sang, even though I understand he could not. Lois got Bob to join the Bethlehem Senior Chorus. They hosted dinners, holiday dinners with family and friends who were like family. There were the social gatherings with neighbors, with colleagues and people from church, breakfasts and lunches, bridal showers and baby showers, day trips to the Berkshires, bridge in the afternoons, the monthly couples club, and the summertime clam bake room. There were amazing parties, too. Cocktail parties and dinner parties, gambling nights, Halloween costume parties, and more. Marcel Proust wrote, "When from a long distant past nothing subsists, after the people are dead, after the things are broken and scattered, the smell and taste of things remain." For Proust, it was the taste of madeleines dipped in tea. For Alan, it's the smell of stale morning after cigarette smoke. It brings back memories of going downstairs to see the haze still hanging after one of his parents' parties. The memory of people enjoying their lives and being together. And that's not to say that all was fun at home, and that Alan and Cheryl were always happy to comply with every request, every rule, as were the children in her classes. Lois was strict, a drill sergeant at times. You knew very well and quickly when she was angry. And Bob and any other dinner guests knew that ice cream was not to be an accompaniment on her home-baked pies. Although I understand that Bob occasionally found reason to go into the kitchen and sneak a spoonful. Lois was in charge at home, and Bob was captain on the boat. His passion was sailing, and even though Lois was never comfortable on the water, she always wore a life vest. She was willing to go because she knew how much Bob loved it, and she loved him, and she loved the social aspects. So many old friends recall sailing with the Thompsons on Lake George. Despite the fact that it wasn't her favorite activity, there's a hint in that photo on the back of your orders of service of her determination to be there, to join her husband and family and friends, and to have a good time. And that's exactly what the extended and chosen families, 4 generations of Ryans and Thompsons, did when they gathered at Daughters of Sarah to celebrate Lois's 95th Christmas, just weeks before her death. They did what they had done at Christmas and other times throughout the years. Alan played the piano, and everyone, including Lois, sang Christmas carols and Broadway tunes. In spite of some difficult times in her earliest years, Lois had a remarkable love of life and a love of all she touched and was touched by. She loved her family, loved her friends and their families, loved her work and the kids she taught, and lived her life fully to the end. Alan?
Thank you all for coming. It's so amazing to see you all here. And please sign the guest book before you go. Lois was heroic. The reason I open with this is because Loie, the Loie we all came to know and love, was operating on top of very large pieces of childhood trauma and hurt, the details of which I certainly will leave out. This leaving her with a hugely low self-esteem, she miraculously acted against the effects of this. And I would include at all aspects and times of her life fighting this stuff off, and built a life for herself that so many of us observed and were part of. I do say this is miraculous because so many people in this situation would have given up a long time ago, but in no way was this our mom, Lois. Probably envisioning herself as someone who would never marry. I mean, wasn't every woman supposed to marry after World War II? And before, and, to live with these thoughts must have been devastating. Anyway, she started nursing school at Wayne University right after high school in 1946. Then was asked to leave a year and a half later because her manual dexterity was judged to be under par for the profession. Did that stop her? No way. She moved with her parents in 1949 to the Bronx, Ferguson Avenue, in case any of you know it. They came from Detroit, where she grew up, and then went to Hunter College, she did, to finish a teaching degree in 1953. Nothing was going to keep her from having a successful life. The game of bridge was a cultural staple in the U.S. among the middle-class white folks, and almost lost art at this point, unfortunately. And Loie's mom, Grace, was a known champion around the country. In 1950, Loie was asked to sub at a game somewhere in the Bronx where she met this guy named Bob from Washington Heights. According to her mom, from whom Cheryl and I, as young children, learned perhaps too many stories about her. Anyway, when they met, according to Grace, sparks flew, and according to her, she knew he was the guy. A month after she finished her degree in 1953, they were married, and somewhere among the wonderfully assembled photo montages that Cheryl has put together in Channing Hall is a great photo of them, she in her graduation gown, and Dad looking quite the dude. Taking a teaching job in second grade in New Rochelle, an almost all Afro-American school, she taught there for one year. In later years, we revisited a flock of about 20 photos that were in her dresser forever that she took of these children, which is to say that she must have loved them dearly and felt good about how well she did with them. Among other things, she went on to raise a couple of fairly decent kids and had a teaching career of 25 years, mostly 3rd and 4th grade. She loved her kids and did a lot with us, which I'll mention by the by here. When Cheryl and I were in our 2 to 5-year-old range, countless mornings she would sit on the couch with us and sing nursery rhymes. There had to be 20 of them or so. When we got to kindergarten and 1st grade, I, for one, anyway, during music class, just sat there like a lump wondering why my fellow cherub knuckleheads couldn't sing. Nobody could carry a tune, period. One time after my next-door buddy, Kevin Ryan, and I finished playing outside, we were 4, I went to Mom home and said, very discouraged and in tears, Kevin can throw a ball better than me, he can skin the cat, he can do somersaults, he can run faster. And Loie pulled yet another rabbit out of her hat and said, well, Alan, one thing that you can do for sure is you can sing better than Kevin. Apparently I'd shown off my vocal prowess to Kevin the next day because just before dinner, Loie got a call from Kevin's mom, Mary Alice, saying, Lois, Kevin came in crying because Alan sang to him all afternoon, and none of us can do that. I can't even carry a tune in a bucket. One thing for sure is that she and Dad came to every single school event, gig, and concert Cheryl and I ever did until they couldn't drive. She knew every word to every song she ever heard, and on long 9-hour car rides, when the kids got scrappy in the back, remember, no seatbelts? She and Dad would pipe up for like an hour with, heart of my heart, I love that melody, and take me out to the ball game. And this brought Dad way out of his shell, and it was very sweet hearing him awkwardly, with gusto, belt out these tunes, and somehow he really did sing in tune. It was all from Loie's initiative. Yes, where was I? Yes, so in later years at the memory care she was in, when I would go in and play the old 20s, 30s, and 40s tunes for her, and she would sing all of the words, and depending on how tired she was, often would close her eyes with her head just laid back, singing the verses to herself. Theater was an important part of her life, and so was ballet and the symphony and the like. She would get tickets to everything, the Proctor shows, Capitol Rep at Albany, Albany Symphony, especially seeing musicals during curtain calls in the midst of all the stand-up and the thunderous applause. She couldn't help showing how much the whole production moved her, as tears often filled her eyes. Dad liked the shows too, but occasionally, after a whole string of them during one week, he'd be flopped on the couch the next day saying, oh, I finally got a night home. Some of you may remember the Colony Tent Theater. Mom took us to see a number of shows there. Donald O'Connor and Promises, Promises, Zero Mostel and his last tour of Fiddler, my time at the hero, at the time, my hero Bill Cosby at the RPI Fieldhouse, among others. Then to New York we went when Cheryl was at Unirondack for a week. And we went down to see Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway and Hello Dolly. I'll never forget Pearlie coming out after the show for what she called her third act and chat with the audience. Something else that Loie was inspiring. When Cheryl and I were 12 and 14, among many trips we took as a family, we went to D.C. during the April break and saw historical places, relics, and museums, which were plenty inspiring for me in and of themselves. On our last day before driving home the next day, we had tickets for a tour of the Capitol. We also had tickets for an open-air jitney bus that drove around the mall during the day to save us time between sites we wanted to see between the Lincoln Memorial and the Capitol. A number of these pleasant open-air buses were operating during the day, and most apparently whoever the hell owned the company had no problem selling far more day passes to riders than there were seats on these buggies. We had 20 minutes to get to the Capitol from the Lincoln Memorial, much too far to walk. And at the designated bus stops, 20, 25, 30 people were steadily accumulating in numbers, and one after another of the pleasant open-air buses, they would stop and leave. A poor college kid would show up appear in a pretty uniform, come out of the bus saying, I'm sorry, but we are filled to capacity and we're not allowed to let people on who don't have a seat, but another coach will be arriving very shortly. After 3 or 4 of these went by, the next stewardess was treated to Mom piping up out of the crowd with finger wagging in the air and loudly saying, you let us on this bus right now. We've got tickets to the Capitol in 20 minutes, and if you don't, I will lie down right in front of the bus until you do. Well, the poor tour guide didn't have much choice, so on we went with Mom and Dad standing in the middle of the bus while Cheryl and I had to sit on that curved plastic thing between the driver and the entrance steps. No way I had the savvy to do it at 14 years old, but it did run through my mind to look at him and say, hey, well, that's my mom. As well as being a heck of an antidote to tell in future times. My main point is that it really was an inspiration that always benefited me. I've rarely had a problem standing up for myself and was never too shy to perform or thoughtfully approach someone that I had a question for. Lastly, Lois was popular. A people pleaser in some situations where it needed to happen, she almost always liked and enjoyed who she was talking with and was hanging out with. At the Masry Assisted Living Residence, where she and Dad lived for years, I would bring different music in with me to play. I would bring different musicians in with me to play music from their era in the gathering space. Right afterward, I got quite a picture of what was really going on. Many of the other women would surround her, wanting to connect and chat with her to the extent that I had no problem hearing one say to another who was standing ahead of her, everyone waiting their turn, of course. Now let me go ahead of you. You talked to her for 20 minutes during lunch. Let me ahead of you. Again, after seeing different variations of this at different times, I referred to her later as the Elvis of the Masry. Again, thank you all so much for coming, and please do sign the guest book, and please hang out afterward if you can.
I might need help. Testing. Can you hear me? Lower. Okay. Well, thank you, Alan. I think I'd have nothing else to add, so I'm just going to be... No, just kidding. All righty. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so very much for coming. I think Lois would have been ecstatic to see everybody here. She always could draw a good crowd. I'm Cheryl, and I didn't always call my mother Lois. I have a very early recollection of reciting, "Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. God bless Mommy and Daddy and Alan and make me a good girl. Amen." Now, I also have a very clear recollection of the conversation that led to me affectionately calling my mother Lois. I was in 10th or 11th grade, and we were sitting at the kitchen table in Altamont, 104 Grand Street, kind of chatting about nicknames and the fact that my father's mother and brother used to always call him Robert instead of Bob, which he preferred. So I said, "Did anybody ever call you Lois?" She sort of got dreamy and thoughtful and said, "My grandma used to call me Lois, and I really liked it, but it never caught on." So I said, "I will call you Lois." And she sort of chuckled and said, "Go ahead if you want." So I did. And this time it caught on. In fact, before long, all the girls on the Guilderland High School gymnastics team were calling her Lois, as did many of her co-workers at Linwood Elementary, where she taught and we practiced. Lois had a good long life, 95 years and 3 months. Born in 1928, just a year before the Great Depression hit, she grew up smack dab in it. To live frugally and be grateful for all you had was a way of life. "Waste not, want not" was one of the many expressions that Lois would regale us with many times over and over again. She had a lot of them. "I'm seldom right, but never wrong. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If brains were dynamite, use your head for something besides a hat rack. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Here's your hat, what's your hurry? Off like a dirty shirt. We're going to hell in a handbasket. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Beggars can't be choosers. If that wouldn't jar your mother's preserves. Do you get any of these? You got to think about them. A day late and a penny short. You say you're sorry. You don't look like I look when I'm sorry. How sharper than a serpent's tooth is but a thankless child. Pretty sure that one was about Alan. It ain't what you know, it's who you know. Just stick with me, kid. And every time we had a family gathering, she would always get around to saying, "Here we are, the whole fam-damly." And as feisty and slightly opinionated as she was, I stand corrected, was not out of the ordinary. Lois was a planner, an organizer, and an educator. While Alan and I were growing up, she took advantage of many long weekends and school vacations to whisk us away to historical sites. I have many fond memories of going to Boston, Williamsburg, Mystic Seaport, Washington, D.C., New York City, and across the ocean to England, France, Amsterdam, and Scotland. Transportation included planes, trains, and/or automobiles to get there, and then walk. Lois set the pace, and the rest of us had to keep up. She never considered herself athletic, and she had a point. Though she loved to participate in Friday night family volleyball at Linwood Elementary, where she was famous for her quick reactions when the ball came to her. But getting back to the walking, she did have this amazing stride and stamina that was unparalleled and not to be challenged until years later by her granddaughter, Amber. So fast forward to 2003. Being a grandma took on a whole different outlook when it came to a vacation destination. The educational value? It took a back seat to the wonderful world of Disney. She and my dad took us all to Disney World for Christmas that year, the whole fam-damly. This is where Lois met her challenge. The 8-year-old Amber's naturally zippy lightning legs were accelerated into high gear with each and every Disney character sighting. Her thrill and excitement couldn't be contained, and nothing could have pleased Grandma Lois more. The following year's family Christmas present was to see the Radio City Music Hall Christmas show. Have you ever been to New York City the week before Christmas? Wall-to-wall people from the time you stepped off the train. We were a party of 7, trying to walk from Penn Station to Radio City Music Hall in the midst of the holiday mob. At that point in time, my dad's poor legs were slowing down, and while the crowded city sidewalks helped to tamp down Lois's pace, the zippy, agile Amber was able to dart ahead, creating a gap that put Lois on high alert. Even though Vinny raced ahead to catch up with Amber, Lois's protective instinct made her pick up the pace, leaving Bob behind in the dust. Alan and Nancy were moving along accordingly. But I was in an agitated state of panicked flux between slowing down to make sure we didn't lose Bob and speeding up to make sure the Amber, Vinny, Lois contingent remained in sight. Nevertheless, we all got to Radio City just in time to wait in a long line, and that was for those with tickets. Well, the show was fantastic. But after a long day of walking, theater going, managing to get a table for 7 without reservations, and sightseeing while keeping all 7 of us in sight, I was ever so relieved to all be back on the train and heading home. There was talk of going back to the city the next year to see a Broadway show, but Lois very insightfully and kindly redirected our family Christmas theater outings to local productions at either Proctor's or Cap Rep, where we went every single year, -2 during COVID, for the next 18 years, right up to December 2022. After a fall in October of that year, shortly followed by an AFib event that landed Lois in the ER both times, and then to Daughters of Sarah Nursing Center, it looked rather doubtful that she could rally for the mid-December performance of Wizard of Oz at her beloved Cap Rep. But rally she did. Wheelchair, oxygen tank, arm in a cast, and all. Lois loved the arts, both visual and performing, whether classical, contemporary, or somewhere in between, including but not limited to plays, musicals, bands, orchestras, and the ballet. It brought her such enjoyment. She made it her goal to share that appreciation with anyone and everyone she could. When earning her Master's of Education degree, Lois specialized in bringing cultural arts to elementary education. She was instrumental in the Guilderland School District's Cultural Arts Committee. For years, she was in charge of making the arrangements to provide many special assemblies and field trips for all the elementary schools in the district. Now, going back to summer of 1968, remember she took Alan down to see Hello Dolly when I was at Camp Adirondack? Well, when he went to Camp Adirondack, I got to go down and see Hello Dolly with Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway. At the time, I had no idea who these two were, or that this was a trend-setting all-black cast production. I just knew that if Lois brought me to a show, it would be a great experience, and I was so right. We must have had spectacular seats because when Pearl Bailey came off stage to glide through the audience, touch as many eager hands as she could, Lois made sure to push me within range of brushing fingertips with Pearl Bailey. I still remember feeling so immensely special and lucky, truly enveloped in the magic of the theater. Lois made the best macaroni and cheese in the world. She used extra sharp cheese and plenty of it. It was my very favorite dish and my birthday dinner request for years. And does anybody remember her cinnamon sticky buns? I heard some yeses. So mouthwatering and delicious. By no means was Lois a gourmet cook, but she did make tasty, simple dishes. And did she ever know how to throw a dinner party, or a brunch, or any sort of party for that matter? For her, it was more about getting family and friends together and seeing to it that everyone enjoyed themselves as much as she enjoyed their company and friendship. Lois was a loving mother and grandmother who took an avid interest in all of our endeavors. She and my dad attended countless concerts and meets, offering unconditional praise and support. Lois' uplifting and cheerful demeanor continued right through until the end. She most always had a smile on her face and a word of thanks and appreciation to all those who cared for her. Even when she was in the throes of on-again, off-again dementia, she would sporadically become totally present and pipe up with one of her pithy zingers, bringing a hearty chuckle to the staffs at Daughters of Sarah and to any of the rest of us who happened to be visiting. She was adored by all at Daughters. Her caretakers would comment on how she never complained and always had a smile. What a great way to be remembered. There was a lot of good entertainment while Lois was at Daughters of Sarah, and many sing-alongs that we enjoyed together. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can still picture us melodramatically crooning away. I'll be loving you always with a love that's true always, not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. I'm done.
My name is Claudia Summers, and I taught with Lois Thompson for many years. I hope many of the things that I share briefly are also the thoughts of staff members that are here today. I met Lois in 1979. She was already a big force at Linwood School, and I was a newbie. And one of the things that struck me about Lois was that she was so welcoming. She was inclusive. She made friends easily, and she befriended me. She'd be at the lunch table, and she'd be saying things like, "You know, I diet Monday through Friday, but on the weekends I splurge." And then she'd go right back to business on Monday. She'd be teaching school and dieting. That was her way. I always remember that one. Lois was a team player, and Linwood was that type of school. Lois would speak her mind, but it was always about what was best for the kids. And I think for that reason, she was so respected, because she was all about those kids. Lois loved music, and I was the music teacher. So it didn't take long before we bonded. And often we worked together, planning programs. She loved musicals, and she would teach her class various songs, like "Getting to Know You" was one of her best ones. That was often included in her classroom program. And I'd work with her on the songs, sometimes even working with her on the piano pieces so that she could play them for the class when they'd be practicing. But I think most of all, it was special that I got to spend a lot of Lois's senior years with her. And although she retired long before I did, eventually in 2005, when I retired, I began to form a chorus of senior citizens. And Lois was very enthused about joining. And join she did, along with Abby Sugarman and some that are here today. And Lois sang so joyously. That is, I think, the picture that will always stay with me. As she sat in that front row, right about where Cheryl is right now, she would just be grinning ear to ear as she sang those songs. And that conveyed such a joy to the people in the audience. But she was like super member of my chorus. She would, again, be so welcoming to all. She was conversational. She loved to tell stories. She stayed afterwards, after our rehearsals, where a small group of us would share lunch together, bringing our little bag lunches. And she'd tell all those stories again. And I guess that's why they've stuck with me. I remember another time when she said, "You know, I've enjoyed my retirement, but I particularly liked those first 5 years when only I was retired." That was so Lois. And she just was such a force in our chorus as well as in the classroom. So easy to get along with, so friendly, so much fun to be with. And I was thinking last night that there would be stairs to come up, and I remember that Lois did one of her absolute class acts at Bob's memorial service, where she stumbled briefly, but then came right back up and delivered the most beautiful tribute. It's not the stumbling I remember. It's how confidently she just moved on, practical as always and pragmatic, and delivered that beautiful tribute to Bob. And so I shall always remember her as that class act and how she sat there in the front row singing so joyfully.
So this song, which is next, which Vinny is going to sing, needs a little bit of an explanation, also known as a disclaimer. I'm not telling you the title of the song yet, because who is depicted in this song is so much of who Lois was. It was one of her favorite songs. I think I remember it as being her favorite song. The verve of the person being spoken about, the attitude of the person being sung about, you'll get the picture. Anyway, so I wanted to say that before I gave you the title, and anyway, the title is Lady is a Tramp.
Okay. That was my sound check guy. Okay. Okay. She gets too hungry for dinner at 8. She loves the theater, but she never comes late. She'd never bother with some people she'd hate. That's why the lady is a tramp. Doesn't like crap games with barons and earls. Won't go up to Harlem wearing ermine and pearls. She won't dish the dirt with the rest of the girls. That is why the lady is a tramp. She loves the free, fresh wind in her hair, her life without care. She's broke, but it's oak, hates California, 'cause it's cold and it's damp. That's why the lady is a tramp. She loved her students, worked hard for their sake, endured the sailing with Bob in a lake. Bob, you're going too fast. She'd go to ballet and she'd even stay awake. In such ways our Lois was a champ. She loved to vacation, the vineyards divine. Root for the Tigers, Hank Greenberg was fine. She read Will Shakespeare, and she liked every line. That's why Lois still a champ. Depression kid with no frown on her face, never a trace. Low dough, but so gave her a style that no cynic could ever cramp. And so our Lois still a champ. She came to New York and she wasted no time. Nabbed a diploma and a partner sublime. Dearly beloved, did those wedding bells chime? That's when our Lois found her champ. She would travel, a true Anglophile, trudge like a trooper for mile upon mile. Bob closely followed, that just was his style. That's why our Lois is still a champ. No, the bridge. She cherished good times with family and friends. Her smile never ends. That glow we'll know. To her sweet memory we whistle and stamp. That's why our Lois, I said, that's why our Lois, that is why our Lois is still a champ.
May your stories be inspired by the medley and the photographs. Indeed, it is a celebration of a great lady's life. We do set aside a few minutes during these services for those of you who may have a brief story to share those stories. I'll bring a microphone.
And I talked to you on the telephone. I'm Janet Kuzman, and I taught only with Lois when she was a substitute teacher. I got there a little later at Linwood, and mine isn't about myself, but I talked to Vinny about this, and I'm talking to you about what it is to have Lois as a substitute teacher. So I happened to talk to my daughter this week. She says, "Mom, what are you going to do on Saturday?" "Oh, I'm going to a funeral." "Really?" I go, "Yeah, for Lois Thompson." "Oh," I say, I got to be careful because I'm going to scream. "Mom, you're kidding me. I loved her. She's a substitute everybody wanted. They all love Mrs. Thompson." That's what she said. I said, "No way." "Oh, yeah, she was great. She was older than us." I go, "Yeah, a little bit." She goes, "But Mom, I can't wait to tell all my friends. Maybe they'll show up." I go, "Okay." So that's what I wanted to let you know as a 42-year-old right now, and she had her as a little 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and she still remembers your mom. And of course, Alan, he taught my girls how to play piano, so there we are. And Cheryl was one of my first students, and Vinny, I sing with him now. So that's the story, and I sang with Lois. But I thought you'd like to know, as a little kid, they still remembered her.
Thanks, Janet. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Libby. I was a neighbor of the Thompsons. And, hi, I'm Libby. I was a neighbor of the Thompsons for many years. I remember Lois saying cogitate. Does anyone remember that? It was fabulous, and I heard it the other day for the first time in years. And I thought, wow, what a special memory. I don't know. It was really a signature remark, and I can see her, twinkling eyes and great smile. Cogitate, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to take this to Abby.
Thank you. Right here? Okay. Lois was one of the last of a generation of members active in this society, a generation that included, among others, Ursula and Oz Poland, Vic Walker, the Weisbarts, the Herons, the Schroeders, the Freemans, the Estes, and the Thompsons, Lois and Bob. About 50 years ago, some of these folks started a square dance group that met in Channing Hall for dancing and a potluck once a month. Our caller wanted us to be like the competitive clubs in the area, to have a name and badges. And because we were all beginners and in it to have fun rather than to win prizes, we chose to call ourselves the Cast-Offs. Cast-Off is a traditional square dance call like Promenade or Honor Your Partner. The group disbanded after a few years, with some going on to join more advanced clubs. But as time went by, we lost our dear fellow dancers one by one. At each memorial service, Lois would rise and say, "We used to have a square dance club here, and so, Fred or Al, Johnny or Ellie, was part of it. And oh, what good times we had." So now I'm saying that for Lois. Didn't we have fun? What good times we had dancing with Loie.
Thank you for carrying that tradition, Abby. In sharing our memories, our sadness, and our joy, we have been reminded, as we are at times like this, of the qualities that we most value in humanity. And so we give thanks for those qualities we saw in Lois, and for the gifts of her presence shared with us. May we remember her well for the person she was, as each of us has known her, or only been a part of her world. May the best she was live on through everyone and everything she touched in this common life of which we are all a part. May those whose lives have been touched most intimately in relationship with her be granted gifts of wisdom, courage, and thanksgiving, through which they will find acceptance and peace. And may she live long in the hearts of all who have known and loved her. Amen. Let us celebrate the power of memory to give us hope. Let us pray for the power of memory to help us heal. Let us honor the many gifts we were given by our beloved. Our challenge is to affirm and celebrate the goodness and beauty and joy in life. And so, let us sing together. Let it be a dance. It's hymn number 311 in your hymnals. Please join the family in the enchanting hall, which is just down the hall and through the doors ahead, as Alan leads us out with music. As Cheryl leads us out, and Alan plays the music. Blessings.